Hello, good evening. This is Business Live. I am Beverly Brom. In our headlines tonight, research lead at GCB Capital, Courage Buti, urges government to find innovative ways of taxing the informal sector. His comment follows the government's new restrictions on borrowing by state-owned enterprises.
If we could even expand the current revenue base by a 30-40% on a sustainable basis, which is feasible given the large size of the informal sector, we may cut our borrowing needs by, a significant percentage.
Courage to establish an agricultural insurance fund to increase insurance coverage in the agriculture space.
The law that has been amended by Parliament, that is what they are saying, that if you say that you are going to do agriculture insurance, then make sure you establish an agricultural insurance fund.
Plus, Ghana Revenue Authority closes down Tropical Enclave Hotel at Osu and Golden Crystal at East Legon as the authority's enforcement team descends on firms failing to issue VAT invoices.
Today, our journey took us to Osu, and we went to Tropical Enclave. They are doing non-issuance of the invoice. That is the infraction. Then we went to Golden Crystal.
Thanks for choosing us. This is Business Live. We'll be back with more. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The government has placed new restrictions on borrowings by state-owned enterprises and other entities to check the country's rising debt. This was captured in the country's new debt management strategy document. Here's more.
The document gives fine details on how government plans to deal with the debts from this year to 2026. This is more of measures to bring Ghana's debts to sustainable levels. It is coming after the World Bank and the IMF classified the country's debts as unsustainable. Government in the document argued that despite plans to limit contracting new debts from non-concessional sources, there might be a window for such borrowings in cases where it is needed to finance very important projects. The Ministry of Finance is also looking at asking these state institutions to pay an upfront fee or non-refundable charge in situations where government has to issue guarantee for these loans. What is called no objection to borrow on the books of these state institutions. These measures may help in mitigating the fiscal risk to government. These programs that government is already implementing is different from the current debt exchange program that is aimed at bringing Ghana's debts to sustainable levels by 2028.
Meanwhile, research lead at GCB Capital, Courage Buti, is urging the government to brainstorm and find innovative ways of taxing the informal sector. He suggests government should turn its attention to the informal sector, which represents about 80% of the Ghanaian workforce.
Borrowing has never been bad. If you're borrowing for a project that can self-sustain or can pay for itself, then there is no problem. We can talk about examples of things like your Terminal 3 project. If you are borrowing to do a Tema motorway and then you put a toll on it, and then the proceeds from that tolling can go into servicing the debt, there is no problem. If you are borrowing to do any other social project, then you must weigh the cost versus the benefits. And if we are doing a kilometer of road, the question should be, is this for political consideration or it has some economic consequence? Of course, not everything can have economic consequence, really. A road in probably some hinterland may not pay for itself through some commercial activity, but then we need to balance that so that the project become on need basis and those with commercial viability, they take precedence, whereas the very social ones that do not have immediate social benefit and immediate commercial benefits, you could moderate how much of those you do. We balance our development strategy that we could be earning money from the commercial ones, which can go into paying for the extremely social projects that we are undertaking. And then we need to look at domestic tax revenue mobilization. And by this, I do not mean raising the tax rate. It has been the common catch whenever we talk of tax. But then it is easier said, I must admit, that expanding the tax base, expanding the tax net is very easy to say, but then the practice of it is actually where the challenge is. And I would expect that going forward, we brainstorm and find innovative ways to get the informal sector players to pay their bet, including the artisans, who we could easily find innovative ways to get into the tax net. The e-levy hasn't done it, but what else could do it? We need to look at that, because if we could even expand the current revenue base by a 30-40% on a sustainable basis, which is feasible given the large size of the informal sector, we may cut our borrowing needs by a significant percentage, really. So we need to look at those means also of trying to reduce the debt burden.
Moving on, government has now set the end of September this year as the new date for the Ghana Financial Stability Fund to take off. It's coming after an earlier date was reviewed by the Finance Ministry. The government says it has now secured the initial seed capital for this fund, as well as some commitment from the country's donor partners. Ghana Association of Banks, in a recent report, pushed for the quick establishment of the fund to support the banks facing liquidity challenges. Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam is the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry.
The DDEP was based on the stress test, the comprehensive stress test that we conducted, to determine the effect of the program on the domestic banks. And so we fully understood what the effect could be. It's the quantum of the effect that we did not know. But we knew that some would be adversely affected. The good news is that some of the banks have recovered quickly, and a lot of them have declared profits. But those that are still faced with solvency challenges, we want to be able to address that through the Financial Stability Fund. And this is money government is putting in place, as well as the World Bank. We are contributing about $500 million. The World Bank wants to do about $250 million. And this is the first phase of the funds that we are going to disburse to banks that are having solvency challenges. Liquidity, we shouldn't even go there, because we don't think there is much of liquidity problems in the banking, local banking sector as a result of the forbearances the Bank of Ghana provided. But for solvency issues, yes, some have, especially the state banks with state interest, and they are the target banks for support under the Financial Stability Fund. We're hoping that by the end of September, I think it should be operational, so that the banks can begin to receive this support in order to make them stronger. You also know that government is embarking on an aggressive growth strategy. And to be able to achieve that, we need to be able to provide the private sector with capital so that they can be able to invest. And therefore, finalizing the Financial Stability Fund and then implementing it as quickly as we could will also help the private sector have access to capital through our local financial institutions to support our growth efforts. So
that doesn't mean that you will go ahead with what you have, the seed capital, whilst later you will look forward to, because you are now working towards September. The World Bank is still working on to advance their support as well. Will we start with something whilst later the additional donor funding comes on board to support?
Yeah, our actual target is $1.5 billion, but the 750 we are doing, as I indicated, is the first phase of support that will be provided through the Financial Stability Fund. And so, yes, we're talking to donors. A lot of them have shown interest as and when it is necessary for government to raise additional funds so that overall we are able to meet the $1.5 billion going forward. We should be able to do that.
Let's go on Zoom now and speak to banking consultant Dr. Richmond Echiahene on this development. Good evening, Doc. Do you think this announcement by the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry is bringing some relief to banks that may be struggling for financial support.
Thank you very much, and good evening to your cherished viewers and listeners. I think it is not too late. What they have said or what they have done, operationalizing it, is very, very crucial as far as the banking sector is concerned. You know, you hear people talking about profitability, equating profitability to solvency. It's not like that at all. Solvency is different, and profitability is a different game. But what I'm saying that for what the minister said, I think is the step in the right direction.
Right.
Because most of the indigenous banks, let me emphasize it, most of the indigenous banks are in serious solvency crisis. And the earlier they do it, the better. I had a chance speaking to some people, some of the industry players, and they told me that it is critical that this stability fund should be operationalized as quickly as possible so that they will not face a lot of problems when the auditors comes in at December 2023.
Right, but what will this mean for investors and shareholders of the banks that would benefit from the funding?
Operationalization is giving a briefing space to the shareholders who would have been expected to bring in capital. But looking at the economic ramification of the DDEP and the economic situation we have now, I'm not sure the shareholders will be there in position to have brought in capital, extra fund to finance it. But what I'm saying that once we have the banks well capitalized, right, it enhances confidence in the industry, especially those who have to do the international trade business. Because if we have a relationship with a correspondent bank like Citibank or JP Morgan or HSBC, they expect a bank that calls itself a bank to have adequate capital before they will possibly even establish a line for your business, your importing business. So it is very, very crucial. And I thought that these things should have been thought about earlier so that we won't have this crisis as we have. But as I've said, it enhances confidence in the industry, and globally, internationally. It puts Ghana on certain pedestal, which is good for the banking sector.
So would you say the timeline is favorable?
Well, I'm hoping that it will be operationalized by this set date, September.
Yes.
And critically, I mean, as I heard the minister, he said that at least they have a provision of 750 available. Maybe what they can do is that they can start allocating it proportionally according to your losses. They can start those who are in trouble, because some are in trouble. And don't forget, some of the listed companies, what I mean by listed, those who are quoted on the stock exchange, Ghana Stock Exchange, have also already started initiating raising capital. And GCB is one. But if you look at the domestic, those not listed, they need a capital as quick as possible to put them on a very strong pedestal to help them in the banking sector.
Right, Doc. So from where you stand, do you think the impacts of the support will immediately turn around the liquidity position of banks?
Well, the liquidity, as the minister said, you see, we are very fortunate in this part of the world. I've always said that what we call information asymmetry has not actually taken root. If the information asymmetry was not part of it, the liquidity would have taken position. Fortunately for us, a lot of banks are mobilizing deposits. So there isn't hassle or jostle for liquidity. But when it comes to the solvency, it is very, very, because we have a regulatory capital limits, 10% and 13%. If you fall below that, possibly you are at the point of being wind up. So for me, if they can solve these liquidity, the solvency, the liquidity will solve itself out. And that will help us to move the industry forward.
Right. Finally, before I let go of you, do you think that Ghanaian banks should be specially favored in the disbursements of these funds to strengthen them, equally as foreign banks?
No. I always go for the indigenous Ghanaian banks. Why? The reason why is some literature, a paper that I have done, have shown that some of the banks, the foreign banks have already started. I can mention Stanbic, FNB, Zenith. They have begun the process already refinancing and recapitalizing some of the banks. And don't forget, it is the domestic banks that suffered heavily. Yes, the indigenous bank really suffered heavily. So for me, we should focus on the domestic bank or the indigenous bank and let the foreign-based bank take care of them, because they've already started it. And I'm sure by the capital plan requirement Bank of Ghana said, I'm sure all the foreign banks have submitted their capital plan. So it is the domestic bank that will have a lot of challenges. So let us concentrate. You see, we have to concentrate, because one thing we should learn from this crisis is that let us build a strong domestic institutions. I'll take you one example. Have you ever heard any Ghanaian bank operating in the Nigerian domestic banking system? Absolutely nothing. Have you ever heard a Ghanaian operating in the South African system? Absolutely nothing. They built Chinese wall around their banking system, makes it very difficult for you to penetrate. But for our case, it is easier for them to come. So that is why they have already started recapitalizing it. And we have to do that so that we can also build a strong domestic banking sector that will keep the economy running. Other than that, a time will come, as we have done to the mining sector and the telecos, we'll be selling our birthright to the foreign institutions. And when they make their money, I mean, they do so many things to get the monies out. So I believe that as a country, let us support indigenous institutions like the banking sector. And let them take care of themselves. Let the foreign banks take care of themselves, because they are ready to capitalize. And let me give you a lead. You know, if you look at the IMF report 23/168, it even recommended takeovers and acquisitions. Has any Ghanaian bank can any one of acquire them? No. It is the foreign banks that will be able to do the acquisition. Like recently, what Access Bank has done to the Stanchart businesses in the sub-region. If we don't take care, we'll be selling our birthright to foreign banks. So I believe, as a Ghanaian, I believe the first line of defense is to support the domestic or the indigenous banking, so that we grow our own businesses as the country grows.
Well said. Thank you so much, banking consultant Dr. Richmond Ntiahene. There. You're still watching Business Live here on the Joy News channel with me, Beverly Broom. We go for a quick break. We'll be back with more. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The Ghana Revenue Authority has closed down Tropical Enclave Hotel in Osu here in Accra and arrested the manager of the facility for failing to issue VAT receipt to clients. The authority has also arrested the manager of Golden Crystal at East Legon in Accra. This is part of the VAT enforcement exercise by the GRA. Here is Area Manager of Enforcement, Assistant Commissioner Joseph Anan, addressing the media after the exercise.
I'll be issuing your own invoices from 2021. You can't do it. When you are ready for us.
Yes, our march is so on to help shore up revenue collection for government. So we are still on our test patches and compliance and enforcement exercise. Today, our journey took us to Osu, and we went to Tropical Enclave. They are doing non-issuance of the invoice. That is the infraction. Then we went to Golden Crystal And then they are issuing their own invoice. It's the same non-issuance. Then we went to Hilton View Hotel. They are not registered. East Legon, they are at East Legon. Then from there, we came to Brands Less for Kids. Brands Less for Kids. They are not registered. And they are at East Legon. We came to Party Tree. They are also not registered. They are at East Legon. Then Lupita Collection. They are also not registered. And they are at East Legon. Then we came to Limpa Fabrics and Accessories and more. They are also not registered. And then we are at Precious Fabrics. They are also non-compliant. They are registered, but they are not issuing the invoice. Then Sheets and Towels Enterprise. They are also not registered. So, we have visited 10 places. We went to 10 places, but one is registered and is compliant. That is Pistics. What is the next? Fashion. Pistics Fashion. They are registered and they are very compliant. So kudos to them.
That's been the challenge over the years, because this is like a developed area, and many of them are not registered or they are not issuing the VAT. What has been the challenge? Have you identified any?
Yeah, it's quite disturbing that you were with us. We went to just a small area and you realize that many of them are not registered. It's an issue we need to tackle. So what we will have to do is, every area has our office, what we call the TSC, who are responsible for the area. So what we need to do is to probably get the TSC, who is responsible for East Legon, to really lace its boots, so that they will make sure that things are done and are done well.
We do agriculture now, and government has been encouraged to establish an agricultural insurance fund to increase insurance coverage in the agriculture space. Policy Officer at AGRA, Dr. Dorothy Atta, emphasized the need for government to devise alternatives in generating revenue for the fund and not burdening the average Ghanaian with more levies. She spoke at a media soiree organized by AGRA.
Agricultural insurance is not widespread in West Africa, with less than 5% of farmers having access to agricultural insurance products. The concept is relatively new in Ghana, with a meagerly percentage signed onto a policy. Policy Officer at AGRA, Dr. Dorothy Atta, believes the best way to remedy this is to establish an agricultural insurance fund.
The law that has been amended by Parliament, that is what they are saying, that if you say that you are going to do agricultural insurance, then make sure you establish an agricultural insurance fund. And how this is going to be established, the fund, not necessarily it could be a levy, but it could even, that in National Insurance Commission gets money from if you insure your car. So perhaps the money that goes to NIC, they can charge perhaps 0.02% should be put into agricultural insurance. But this is something that will go through Parliament for them to establish. Because right now, I was even telling people that right now, our present situation, the window is not really conducive to pushing something like a levy on agricultural insurance because of already the tax burden that our nation is going through.
AGRA recently launched its strategy 3.0. Program Officer at AGRA, Bashiru Musa, gave a breakdown of how his outfit helped farmers to gain access to markets under the first and second strategies.
The plan of that project was to basically support some processors. The lead processors, there were about 4 of them under the rice, who were basically processors around the southern part of Ghana and then the northern part of Ghana, to be able to offtake from the farmers. Now, what is very pathetic is that if a farmer produces and he has no option, he has no place to sell, you can be, best assured that the following year round, he's either going to switch to a different crop or he may not even produce at all.
And that's how we end Business Live tonight. For more news, you can log on to myjoyonline.com/business. I'm Beverly Broom. Enjoy the rest of our programs.